Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we got a bit of a longer comment or question that comes to us from Zachary Clark, who asked, "Hey Thor, I recently heard a great explanation about the difference between gray morality and moral complexity. For me, this sums up why Andor was great versus a show like The Acolyte. I also think it addresses the supposed contradiction of why a show like Andor can be considered great Star Wars, but not concepts like Grey Jedi or what the Acolyte tried to do in making the Jedi the bad guys." This is from a video from a channel called Trill that mainly focuses on role-playing games. Gray morality refers to the approach where characters, factions, or situations are morally ambiguous rather than clearly defined good or evil. Gray morality focuses on ambiguity, blurring the lines between right and wrong, often by presenting morally ambiguous characters or scenarios. This often creates an atmosphere where moral clarity feels extremely elusive. This tends to lend itself to a sense of nihilism or cynicism, where the lack of clear moral distinctions makes every choice feel equally flawed or, in its extreme, pointless. Moral complexity, however, enriches games by acknowledging that clear choices can have difficult, far-reaching consequences. Moral complexity focuses on nuance and presents choices with layers and trade-offs, challenging players to balance conflicting values or outcomes. Unlike gray morality, moral complexity doesn't inherently obscure moral clarity. Instead, it highlights that making the right choice can still involve sacrifices or unintended consequences. In the morally complex scenario, choices are still difficult, but they're not meaningless. Every option has consequences. Gray morality presents a world where all choices are tainted and players are forced into picking the lesser evil in a system that is fundamentally broken. Whereas moral complexity offers a world where ethical decisions are hard but still carry meaning and impact. Sorry, the quote is so long. Love to hear your thoughts on this. And no apology necessary. I think it's a great quote. It has me wanting to check out this channel, especially since I do like to play role-playing games myself. And it sums up the difference between the two concepts quite nicely, and also begins to, as you're suggesting, explain the difference between Andor and the Acolyte. Why, despite both being what you could call, or generically call, more on the gray side of things, where it's not just a simple fight of good versus evil, where here's the good guys who are clearly only just that. They're just good guys who would never ever do anything wrong, even for the right reasons, and they fight the bad guys who are bad and do bad things simply because they're bad. Anyway, despite Andor and the Acolyte both being a bit on the gray side, if you will, or for a lack of a better way of putting it, I think Andor fits much better into Star Wars than the Acolyte does, or what Star Wars is supposed to be, you could argue, which are valuable life lessons, especially for younger people, as more or less stated by George Lucas himself. But Andor fits better into that for the simple reason that it explores the idea that, to put it very simply, that it's hard to be the good guys, while the Acolyte says that it's hard to be the bad guys? And to go a little deeper than that, Andor says it's hard to be the good guys because sometimes the bad guys are so bad that you have to do terrible things just to hope to combat them and someday defeat them. While the Acolyte says something similar, it says almost the same thing actually, but in a sort of reverse way. It says sometimes the good guys are so bad, just as is, I guess, that you're justified in being a bad guy in order to have freedom from their oppression. Even if your definition of freedom is sort of absolute freedom, where you don't feel you should have to follow any laws or rules, where you have no moral code at all to guide you, or perhaps I should say to restrain you. Kamir isn't fighting the Jedi just because he thinks they're the bad guys and they're oppressing him and or maybe the galaxy. He's fighting the Jedi because they won't allow him to, they won't allow him to do whatever the hell he wants. And he doesn't care what he has to do to get what he wants. There is, going back to the beautiful quote at the start, there's no real complexity there. There's no question you should be asking yourself about Kamir. He's pretty cut and dry. But then we have a character like Luthen Rael in Andor who still has a moral code, one I'd argue he would love to live by. It seems clear he just wants to live a normal life, or would if he could, but he can't because of the Empire. He has to forego his morals in order to fight an enemy that has none. There is simply no other way he can see to defeat them, period. And doing this is costing him everything. Getting what he wants won't even liberate him, per se. Instead, everything he's doing along the way is destroying his very soul. He's giving it so that others may know the peace he never will. His seemingly unscrupulous actions and tactics are being done for selfless reasons, unlike Kamir and the Acolyte, who, again, he just wants freedom for himself because he wants to live however he sees fit. He is the epitome of selfishness. He is a good Sith. The Acolyte also then ignores the fact that there is oftentimes a reason why good guys would seek to stop you or intervene in what you're doing, which is that you're doing things that may be harming others or simply breaking the laws. Leslie Headland, the showrunner of The Acolyte, even essentially said at one point that we're supposed to overlook the fact that Kamir is a murderer and simply see his plight and relate to him. While, on the other hand, or so I would imagine, Tony Gilroy, showrunner of Andor, might say something quite different again about a character like Luthen Rael, that we are not supposed to overlook the fact that he is a murderer. We are very much supposed to consider that, to consider and weigh in our mind the fact that the things he has done has led to the death of people, probably innocent people as well. We are supposed to look directly at his actions, at the things he has done, and ask the really, really hard question. Is he right to do them? This is moral complexity at its finest. This isn't a gray morality. This is the show asking, is he right or is he wrong? Which, again, in Headland's own words, is not what she wants you to think about with Kamir or her show. She just wants you to have sympathy for a selfish murderer, I guess? Whereas Gilroy is asking you, is the guy doing horrible things in the name of good? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he right? Is he wrong? What would you do in that situation? But anyway, where the Acolyte fails is if the good guys, and sorry for these very generic terms I'm using, but I'm just trying to keep it simple here and not confuse you or myself. But if the good guys are truly going out of their way without a legit reason to interfere or to oppress other people, well, then they're not the good guys anymore. Then they have become the bad guys. For example, the Empire, or Palpatine himself, when he created the Empire, he said he was doing this for all the right reasons, but we knew otherwise. We knew he just wanted power, and it didn't matter if he claims this is a good or noble cause. You can say you're a good guy all you want, but if your actions do not align with your words, well, then you're a bad guy. Just like if the Jedi say they're the guardians of peace and justice in the Republic, but are indeed overstepping, well, then they're not the good guys anymore, or not entirely. And so the Acolyte says that the Jedi Order is corrupted to some degree. They even cover up murders, apparently, and that they are not the good guys. And mind you, if you watch this show outside the context of everything else Star Wars, if you watch the Acolyte outside of that, you don't know that in all reality or elsewhere in the canon or in other stories that the Jedi are the good guys, with George Lucas himself once saying they were the most moral beings in the entire galaxy, that they do have the moral authority to do what they do. But if you don't know that beforehand, this show isn't likely going to give you that impression about the Jedi. They'll just feel like any other corrupt organization out there or that has been seen in a show or movie. An organization that claims to be good, or looks like they are on the surface, but actually really isn't. Now, I'm not saying a lot of people out there, even if they've never seen anything Star Wars before, that the Jedi are the good guys, but again, in story, we're really given no reason in the show to truly believe they usually are. In fact, this story tends to make the argument that they're usually not the good guys. And so, to wrap it up here, Andor is about the moral quandary people often find themselves in when taking on something that is truly wrong or evil, to the point where that wrong or evil thing has absolutely no moral code, where they will do virtually anything to seize or keep power or to accomplish whatever it is they are trying to accomplish. And if you yourself have a moral code, if you beholden yourself to it and only act a certain way, it is almost inevitably going to put you at a great, if not impossible to overcome, disadvantage against them. Especially if they, in the case of Star Wars with the Rebellion versus Empire, if they have several other advantages such as sheer might and size on their side. It also wants you to think about or ask yourself some very, very hard questions. This, again, is moral complexity. It is not a gray morality. There is right and there is wrong, and you have to figure out which is which. Unlike the Acolyte, which tells you who the bad guys are, pretty much everybody is a bad guy to some degree in the show, and it doesn't really want you asking the hard questions. It just, I guess, wants you rooting for the bad guys in the end. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below and tell me what you think about this one. Tell me what you think separates Andor and the Acolyte when it comes to morality. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do, start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.